Well, can you ever imagine Madonna apologising? Well, guess what? She actually did. Admittedly, it was all the way back in 1994, but she did. She did say sorry. Possibly for the last time in her life. The apology album was called Bedtime Stories. And it was everything you'd expect from Madonna, forced into expressing remorse. Some of the key messages in Madonna's apology? Well, let's summarise. I'm sorry, but I don't regret anything. I'm sorry, but I will never be an angel. I'm sorry, but I'm not your bitch. And of course, the famous, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. It's possibly the most unapologetic apology you'll ever find in pop culture, but the truth is, it was one that needed to be made. The stakes were high. Her career was at legitimate risk. At the time of Bedtime Stories' release, Madonna was still recovering from overexposure. The public were unquestionably exhausted by her, and not just because of her deliberately controversial views about sex and sexuality, which flowed through the dramatic erotica era, but also because of her loudness, her rudeness, think David Letterman, and her apparently childish need for attention. Middle America was not so much shocked by Madonna anymore, as they were fed up. So after a retreat from the limelight, which lasted about 18 months, Madonna made a masterful, tactical return to the public domain, releasing the mid-tempo, calm work of Bedtime Stories. Both the music and the promotion, subtle and gentle. Felix and Kyle are with me to retro review the Bedtime Stories album. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi.
Hello.
It's great to have you on board again following our last erotica retro review, which, by the way, is still getting lots of streams every day, which is fantastic. G'day to all those Madonna fans who tune in, and even those who left really poor comments under the last one. We love you all. Kyle, this album is full of classics. One of Madonna's best ever chart-performing singles is actually on this album, yet her fans just don't get excited by Bedtime Stories, or so it seems. We couldn't find fans who could be bothered to talk about Bedtime Stories in this podcast, for example. Why do you reckon it is? What's the lack of excitement with this one?
For me, it just had a different feel. It's a little bit more playful. It's not as mature as her other albums in ways. I mean, there's tracks that are very mature, but the rest of it, her vocals are kind of childlike and playful. I just think, like you said, I think she was kind of overexposed at that point.
Maybe people respect this album rather than be excited by it.
Well, yeah, there's songs on there that people love and say that they're their favorites, like Take a Bow and Human Nature and songs like that.
I mean, honestly, I feel like there's people I think feel like there's a couple of songs on the album that's kind of filler. It's just, it was a different sound for her. She was always, from going from the 80s new wave club sound to, new wave pop, and then with erotica going to, house and R&B, and then just kind of going straight to this is her most pop.
More like hip hop.
Yeah, exactly.
More hip hop, yeah.
And this is her most, I would say, pop record that she's recorded. It's the most mainstream sounding to me. From going from erotica to Bedtime Stories, it's a different feel. It's a different album. It's,
night and day.
Exactly.
Night and day.
And even her vocals, even on Inside of Me, there's kind of like a childlike playfulness to her vocals. It's definitely not a serious album in my eyes. Well, I mean, there are some serious tracks, but I mean, for the most part.
It's interesting that you say that it's playful, because I've always interpreted Bedtime Stories to be, don't get me wrong, not as mythical and mystical as Ray of Light, but I feel like this was one of the seeds for Ray of Light to me. It's very introspective. It's no longer focused on, trivial issues. It's very much how she's feeling inside of me, about her relationship with her mother and like she's deliberating with herself about where she is in life. It almost feels like when you listen to the album back to back and listen to the lyrics that she was lost. The New York Times, I'm just reading in front of me, Stephen Holden, he wrote at the time that Bedtime Stories was easily Madonna's best album, and he concluded that it was a seductive mixture of soft-focus hip-hop and bittersweet ballads. This was a very 90s album, wasn't it? We spoke about Erotica, it sort of had a very 90s feel to it. Bedtime Stories too, though, right? This is like so 90s. When I listen to it, I'm instantly thrown back to all the music of that era because it really dug into that sound.
She worked with like Dallas Austin, and he worked with TLC, and so it had kind of similar sound in a couple of songs. So like what they did with Crazy Sexy Cool, because that came out around the same time. It got played on a lot of hip hop stations too, like Human Nature I used to hear on hip hop stations all the time.
I know it like debuted in the States at number 3. I think in Australia it went to number 1, but it didn't really chart too many places. I mean, it sold 8 million records so far, I believe, to this date, and it's platinum in, most countries. So, I mean, it sold well, but
not as big as her biggest albums, but that's still very reasonable sales figures, though.
True, and I mean, I think it went up for best Grammy for album of the year. I don't think it won, but I think it was nominated, if I'm correct. Like you said, it was really respected by critics, and I think it's just, I don't know. Like I said, it's in my top 3 favorite albums, but it's definitely probably number 3.
Also take you up, like it's obviously completely your opinion, Kyle, and that's absolutely fine, but for you to interpret the lyrics as quite childish in some ways, I saw it as a mature album at the time, because Erotica was, for me, it was like sticking your tongue out at the world. Don't get me wrong, it was sophisticated music and it was much more clever than people gave it credit for, but as a product, that was a bit more of a naughty poking of the tongue, or more than a poking of the tongue. It was actually like a adolescent child out of control, actually. When this came out...
Like a big middle finger.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly. But when this album came out, though, I felt a maturity to it. Obviously, as fans, we were growing up as well as we went. Put it this way, I know it must sound to some people more mature. My parents liked this album, and that says something, because they were not into pop music at all, but they were like, we can tolerate that one, and it grew on them to the point where I was actually asked to put this on.
I don't know, from going from Erotica, which is like, concept album, to where, to me, everything with Erotica, like, I wouldn't change anything. I think that's the greatest album of all time. This one, like I said, there's just some songs that I like all the songs, but people do kind of say that there's kind of, other than the singles, there's maybe 2 more songs that fit the album, and the rest seems kind of like a filler. And I know that the record label was really in control, because I know she was trying to have Tupac on
oh, really?
I'd Rather Be Your
I'd
Lover.
Rather Be Your Lover.
Yeah, but the studio wouldn't go for it, because they're like, no, this is not the image that we're trying to get for you. But the weird thing about this album is why it's an apology album. Her attitude kind of says otherwise.
Oh, exactly.
Like you said, she was doing David Letterman, and she had that kind of, why she was trying to change her image and soften her image for the record company. She was still very sexual. I mean, the Take a Bow video, I remember, like you said, Felix, watching the making of.
Yeah.
That's a pretty sexual video. I mean, Human Nature itself, not only the song, but the video. I mean, she's the same person. So I think that might be one reason, too. It's just, she came back with the nose ring and kind of this, like you said, hip-hop vibe that was just kind of like bad girl dating Tupac at the time. So
she was wearing a lot more clothes throughout this era as well, though. She definitely, for me, I just love the synergy of it, because you're absolutely right. We still have Madonna, who is Madonna, and all that comes with being Madonna, the attitude, the sexuality, and all of that. And it was like this during the promotion of this era. She was boxed. So she was like, okay, I will sit here where you need me to be, record company, public, middle America, all the people that want to put me here. But I'm not sorry, and I'm going to do it my way. It's really interesting. I'd love to hear her thoughts looking back, if she has any regrets about this album. Not the music, but about the way it was done. It's easy in hindsight.
Well, even if she did, she would never say it.
In hindsight, we all go, well, she's Madonna. She's eternal. She's never going to be extinguished, because that's the truth. But at this time, I lived through it. It was absolutely a possibility that she was done, overcooked. And so she had no choice but to do this.
Everybody was saying that after Erotica. That she was done and she was over. Like, I saw somebody wrote an article when she was like 35 calling her grandma already. Like,
in the pop world, she was. I love the packaging of this as well. I have to admit, the green and the greenish color of the album cover is not something you'd think. It's so, like, if you read it on paper, you'd go, "No, that's not going to work." But the photography on that was beautiful for the cover and that whole shoot.
The whole little booklet,
It's recognizable. You don't even need to see like the name on, just like most her albums.
I believe it was shot by a very famous French photographer. I can't remember at all who it was.
Patrick Dermachler.
Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah, he's highly respected, and like he was given a brief about what they were trying to achieve for this.
And I remember there was two covers. One was like upside down, and the other one was face up.
It really is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Was that a mistake?
No, I don't
know. I guess.
In certain regions they had a different photo, and it was the same photo, but like you said, one's upside down and one's normal.
Wow.
And the photo shoot actually happened on her birthday too. So.
Did it really?
Uh-huh.
From what I know around the creation of the music of this album, Madonna's initial brief was that she wanted something very lush. She wanted ballads. She wanted that softness. So that's where the seed started, as far as I know. Lush ballads used to be my playground style. And Babyface was brought in specifically to do that and played her the bare bones of Take a Bow. And from there, I believe the album, yes. And I think she immediately went, yes, that's the sound. More lush, add to it, layer it. And I believe that's where the beginning of this album began.
What I do like about the album is it kind of flows in a certain way to where it's a little bit more fun in the beginning. Like after the first two tracks, it gets a little bit more playful. And then by the second half of the album, it starts to get a little bit more on the ballads, a little bit more
ethereal,
mature, and a lot more mature. But then also the music starts to take a lot more of an electronic feel, because
like Sanctuary,
and Bedtime Stories just flow together. I think the way she paced the album, I think, was perfect for this album.
I'll be interested to hear if you're listening to this and if you've got an opinion about it. Was this for Seeds for Ray of Light? Am I the only person in the world who thinks this? Just from the point of, not the music so much, but more from the point of view of Madonna being very introspective and very deep, and the lyrics. I actually thought this was a real step in the right direction. Let's go through this album track by track, shall we? So
sounds good.
The album starts with Survival. Which it says it all, really. She's been kicked to the curb through the Erotica album. She's, there's risk to her career. Survival is the perfect start for this album, isn't it? Because that's what this album was aiming to do, to give her the opportunity for survival.
But this one, it just, to me, it's like, I don't know, it just didn't seem, I remember when I listened to it at a young age still, I just kind of felt like it's just it was such a weird time for her, because after, like you said, after Erotica, Sex, Body of Evidence, and all the backlash she got, it just seems like she just kind of stands out in a different way that she never stood out to me before. I feel like she was trying a little too hard.
Mm-hmm. It's very monotonous, this song too, isn't it? In the best possible way.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like her best opening track for an album, but I mean, it's a good one. Like you said, it kind of sets the tone on what the album's about. And like you said, one of the main goals of the album was an apology.
Like Kyle said, it's not like best opening track, but it's a good song.
Let me summarize. You're both saying it's a bit blah, blah. And for the
it's okay.
For the core Madonna fans, I get why they'd say that, because they want the huge explosion of fireworks at the beginning of an album and all of that. But the opening single of this album, of course, was Secret, which is track 2 on the album. Ooh, I remember when I saw it, I could barely recognize Madonna. I wasn't literally sitting in front of a television to watch this. I think I saw it on a sort of big screen at the back of like a pub or a club or something like that. And I was like, is that Madonna? Back in the days where you didn't get samples. By the way, I think this was one of the first albums that Madonna did a little sample on the internet. I think only 15% of Americans had the internet at the time, but little known fact, I'm pretty sure she released a little snippet of a song. You probably had to wait 3 days to download the 4 seconds, but nonetheless, I'm pretty sure, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, that this was the first time she used the internet for any sort of promotion of an album. But most of us fans didn't have the internet, so when Secret came out, we literally saw it for the first time there on MTV or on the radio. What do we both make of the opening single?
They played the Junior Vasquez remixes at the clubs a lot.
Oh, how good are those, though? Then.
The Junior Vasquez remixes he does are amazing.
Yeah, she's still the remix queen at this point in her career, that's for sure. Amazing remixes. It's funny, my voice got heightened and excited by the mention of the remix, but the song I also love. It's hard to sing, by the way, this song. Do you reckon she struggles to sing it too? Is that why she very rarely sings it live?
Yeah, because I remember when I saw her do it on the Drum World Tour, it seemed like she was having a hard time.
Oh, really?
Singing. Well, she was trying to sing it like she did on the record, but like a little lower, because some songs she sings lower when she does them live.
The fans are often bewildered or seem bewildered. Why did she leave some of her best songs out of every tour, like Frozen, for example, and Secret, and Take a Bow? And my suspicion has always been they're hard to sing, and they're not in.
Yeah.
She can sing them, by the way, because she did a performance. We'll get to Take a Bow soon. She did just one performance at an awards show, and she managed it, but you could tell that there was stress on her face. Was she going to be able to nail this? By the way, Madonna, you did. It was fantastic. Babyface was there for that performance too. But Secret wasn't the right first single, though. I promise we'll get to that. I shouldn't have prematurely brought it up, Felix, but as an opening single, was this the right track? If you could have your way and choose an opening single from Bedtime Stories, which one would you have chosen?
I think Secret was a good choice.
I agree, because it was a different Madonna. It was, how she's always reinventing herself. It was the new Madonna. This is the new sound she's going for. It's the new look she has. Like you said, Tim, even my parents liked this album too. My dad, he's all into jazz, and he's like, oh, she's doing a jazz track. And I'm like, okay.
Well, after your story last time about Where Life Begins, I'm sure your dad was just relieved that this was not about, oral sex.
Right.
Still love that story.
There is no parental advisory. Stick around this album.
There were better singles to choose on this album, but she was right to choose Secret as the opening single because of the mission of this album. For example, on the surface of it, Human Nature was a much stronger single, possibly Bedtime Story as well, but they would have painted the wrong picture of the album. They wouldn't be the apology that I've spoken about at the beginning. That would have been, because they're killer tracks, both of them, but they don't really explain what she was trying to do with the album. So I really do get why Secret was the opening single. The film clip, again, very deliberately, dare I say mundane? Boring?
I liked it, but I was 9 when it came out, so anything she was doing, that's when anything she did do, I was obsessed with.
Yes,
she could do no wrong.
She could do no wrong.
I was a child.
I like that it told a story.
It did tell a story?
Yeah.
Because I can't see one in there, to be honest. But from the last podcast, I miss the meaning of many things she does. What's the story in this? She's just walking around and she's in a bit of a jazz club.
Well, she was in a club. She was singing, and then there was parts where she was with this guy, and she said my baby's got a secret, and I guess the secret was that the boyfriend had a kid.
Oh, really?
And
yeah, this is as big as the bad girl revelation from the last podcast. I'm shocked. Did she? Don't tell me she brought out a baby in the video clip. I definitely did not see that.
Well, no, the guy that she was with.
Yeah.
There is one at the end. Oh man, you guys are such constant sources of information to me.
But you've also heard rumor what the song's about, correct?
No. It's just a secret, Kyle. Don't ruin it for me. It's just an undisclosed secret.
Well, I mean, I don't want to ruin it for you, but rumor is that the song's about a transsexual keeping a secret from someone she's dating.
Oh, God, come on. What? So what the secret is that the person has a penis when he's not... Is that what you mean?
I mean, that's just the rumor that I've heard.
That's ridiculous. Quash that rumor. Quash it now.
I think it was the boyfriend having a kid. I think that was the secret.
Well, yes, it can't be both. It can't be both, people. Or maybe it can. Maybe there's a lot more to this than we realise. Oh, mind blown. Mind blown. Oh, wow. There was some leaked footage recently that I saw. I don't know if it's been around for years, where I know it's only a boring fact, but she had a big hair for, in some of the outtakes, but they didn't use it in the final clip.
Big curly hair, and she was wearing a coat and like a red dress.
It was going to be shot in black and white, but everyone that left a comment underneath that footage said, thank God she didn't use it in the final video clip, because she did look quite strange.
Yeah, I didn't really like the hair.
It was too poofy.
Yeah, it just looked weird. Yeah,
Didn't it look a little bit like the Deeper and Deeper big afro wig from the Girly Show tour?
It wasn't
probably not that big. It was getting there, though. Okay. All right. Well, I'll be interested to hear what people have to say about the lead single. Should it have been secret? Was it about a transsexual? Was it about a secret baby? Or was it just a lovely song like I like to think? I'd Rather Be Your Lover was track 3 on the album, and it features someone who I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Can either of you pronounce Michelle's surname?
Michelle and Cello.
Oh, Felix, can you say that again? It turns me on.
Michelle and Cello.
Oh, a little shiver up the spine. That's beautiful. I can't even hear somebody extra on this track, if I'm going to be honest. I can just hear the usual backing tracks. What do we make of I'd Rather Be Your Lover? It's got a funky beat.
This is one of the tracks I feel like people kind of think it's a filler track, and Tupac was originally supposed to be
so this was for Tupac. Wow. Yeah.
If he had been on it, it would have probably been a single.
Oh, of course there's a second. People listening must think I'm a complete nincompoop. And you watch the comments raw. Yep, you are. Yep, you are. I get the second. That's the part where he's sort of rapping, right? Tell me what you want. Yeah, no, I know that part now.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be him.
Don't
that was supposed to be him, but they got Michelle to do that part.
Right. Okay. No, I do get it now. I get it. Believe me, I know this album inside out. I've probably listened to this album more than any other, mainly because it's one you can put on in the background. And, you don't have to focus on. You can put it on while you're cooking. It sets a nice Sunday vibe, really. So I actually do know my stuff, but yeah, clearly I'm out of my depth with that. So it sounds, do you think it is a filler track though, Kyle? You said that people have described it that way. What do you think?
I mean, I like the album. I mean, I grew up on it. So, I mean, the album itself holds like a special part to me. But I could see where other people just think it's just a filler track.
Yeah.
Felix, do you agree that Kyle's been a bit unconvincing here? Every song is like, yeah, I like it, with lots of doubt in his voice.
I mean,
I like that she's like was like kind of soulful and she was doing the verses.
I don't know why I love track 4, Don't Stop, so much, because it's very repetitive, but there's just something really light and optimistic about it. Again, it's part of her I'm apologizing, not apologizing theme that threads throughout this album. Don't Stop. What do we make of track 4?
That was a filler for me.
You skip that one, do you, Felix?
I don't skip it. It's just like, it's more like filler, it's like, okay, I just want to throw this in here just to put it on. That's what it seemed like.
So I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like there's times where it's like, okay, we gotta add another song or two to make a complete album. So I mean,
Wow. For Madonna fans, this is harsh criticism. Harsh criticism. There was also a track I'll just throw in here before we move on, written by Gary Barlow. I know there were a lot of tracks, okay, that didn't make and there's a lot of demos, but there's one that I understand why it's not on the album, but he eventually released it, which is
Love Won't Wait.
Love Won't Wait. Thank you, Felix. You're always that source of information. Yes, Love Won't Wait, which I really like, and I like her version very much, but it wouldn't have fit on this album. It was way too pop, whereas this was R&B.
It had like a disco sound to it.
Inside of Me. Now, when most people listen to this track for the first time, they don't get that this is actually a song that she wrote about her mother, and I know that because I think it was an Australian interviewer, either Ray Martin or Molly Meldrum, for those Australian people tuned in, that asked her about that song, and she corrected them. Whoever the interviewer was, I've probably got that wrong, but she corrected them and said, "You're wrong. That's actually a song about my mother."
it's actually one of my favorite songs off the album. But this one, I mean, like her vocals on that track seem like she's trying to like sound almost childlike.
You're spot on, Kyle.
Yeah,
you're spot on.
She sounded like she was trying to be like a little girl singing a song to her mom.
When I was saying about the immaturity and kind of like just kind of different vibe, I think that stuck out to people. Like I love the song, but when other people hear it, they're probably like, okay, why is she trying to sing like a little girl?
But this one breaks my heart when I listen to it. When you actually realize, we all know as Madonna fans how much her mother's death meant to her and how much it impacted on her life. This song is the little girl's tragedy rather than the woman's perspective on looking back. For me, this is the little girl. It's such a vulnerable song. It makes me really sad when I listen to the lyrics, so I try not to. I just try to enjoy the melody sometimes, especially when she talks about keeping a picture of her beside her bed, and it's sad. It touches any experience of grief or loss you've had in your own life.
If you think of Promise to Try from Like a Prayer, they're so different because that song sounds just so much more mature. And to me, it's a little bit more mournful than Inside of Me.
Sure.
Like you said, Promise to Try was like kind of like parallel to that, like that was the adult version of her singing about her mom. And then Inside of Me was like her thinking of herself as a little girl performing for her mom.
I guess it's the delivery of the album is how it comes across, if that makes sense.
The vocals are very breathy. It's interesting how you've interpreted it, because there's nothing wrong. You've interpreted it a certain way, but I've interpreted it differently. Breathy and vulnerable and fragile, and in tracks like Bedtime Stories and Sanctuary, ethereal and ghost-like. That's how I've interpreted it, but you hear it differently and clearly did at the time, and that carries through for you. So that's really interesting for me to hear somebody who's listening to the same track but hearing it differently. I'm interested. I think we're going to have universal agreement around track 6, which is Human Nature. Here in Australia, there's a radio station called Triple J. Very grungy, and it's like only for the very coolest people tune into Triple J. It caused quite the scene when they were playing Human Nature on Triple J. That was a big headline moment in Australia. Wow, Madonna on Triple J, because it just doesn't marry up usually. Human Nature, though, I mean, this is absolute Madonna classic, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
One of my favorite videos.
Oh, how good is the video? Oh wow, the preparation that must have gone into that, because it's so precise and like clinical, isn't it? Every move involves everyone doing something exactly the right way at the same time. It's incredible. I love it.
See, that's one of the things that makes this album a little bit hypocritical in a way, because as I was saying earlier, it's why it's an apology album. Looking back, she's the same person in my eyes. She was kind of the same diva that was walking around hitchhiking naked for erotica. I mean, her behavior seemed the same. Like you said, she had that sorry, not sorry attitude.
Absolutely. And this was the track that revealed the secret fully. Like, there were little clues in all the tracks before Human Nature, but if you wanted to be absolutely certain that Madonna actually was just not really apologizing, get to this track and then you hear it. And it's all about slut shaming too. This, when I listen to this is her way of returning to that. It's her last word on the erotica era, because what was she trying to do during the erotica era? She was trying to tell the world, particularly middle America, that it is okay to talk about sex. Sexuality is not something to be ashamed of. Violence is the bigger demon in our society. So Human Nature, even though this is an apology album, it's where she comes back and has the last say. She goes, "You slut shamed me. You made me feel this tall for talking about sex. You made me ashamed of being a woman, or tried to make me be ashamed. But guess what? I'm actually not sorry. Fuck you." And it's such a good, and the video that accompanies it, the actual choreography, it puts into dance that message that I just described. But then she softens it. She softens it with cheek, because I love the video. She has plenty of cheeky moments to actually dilute how hateful this song is, because she's fucking angry in this song, actually. When she wrote this song, I wouldn't have wanted to be in the room. She was angry.
Well, yeah, she was being, like you said, she was slut-shamed. People were saying she had AIDS.
Mm-hmm. But like all good artists, she turned, an extreme moment in her life into something fantastic. That suit she wore in the video, what the devil was that? And someone in fashion better tell me, because, God, what was she poured into that or what?
Oh, oops, I did it again. Oops, I did it again.
It's just such a great track, and she never leaves it out. She can sing it well. She can nail the vocals for this one well. I mean, this is one of her legacy songs, surely. Do you both agree with that?
Yeah, she's always performing outdoors. Yeah, it seems to be one of her staples.
So Human Nature, I mean, this is a huge fan favourite. Leave your comments down below. What do you think of Human Nature? I think without Human Nature, Madonna fans would be a lot sadder, which is a really odd thing to say, but it's sort of true. It's one of those classics. Track 7, Forbidden Love. Oh, Babyface. Am I going to hear Filler again?
No, I love that song.
It's not one of the best songs on the album. So, I mean, I could see where some people might think it's a filler track. I mean, it just doesn't stand out. The thing about this album, too, it seems like, honestly, the best tracks, except for, like, 2 other favorites of mine, were the singles.
I liked Forbidden Love, but I don't think it would have done good as a single.
I've actually never thought of it like that, Cole. I think you're spot on. That the singles that were released, yep, yay, that's good. But there's not many other tracks that, because they're all part of the vibe of the album, the other tracks, aren't they? Some people would accuse them of being fillers. For me, that's just, they're creating the atmosphere of what she was trying to achieve. But I can't think of any other songs on this album that I wish she'd released. Not at all.
Yeah, no, I don't think any other song, even if she did that song with I'd Rather Be Your Lover with Tupac. Sanctuary's, I love that track, but I don't think it would work as a single. Even if she had Tupac on I'd Rather Be Your Lover, I don't think it'd be a hit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It would have got some attention, but that's about it. I agree, it wouldn't have been a hit. So Forbidden Love, we're scooting past fairly quickly, because even though it seems like, yep, we like it, it just, it doesn't stand out. But the one that does for me, and I don't know if you both agree with this, is Love Tried to Welcome Me. I believe this is one of the examples of the lush ballad that she really wanted for this album. I adore this song, Love Tried to Welcome Me.
Yeah, so I think it's one of my favorite ballads of hers. I do actually really like this song a lot.
Has she ever sung it live? And if she hasn't, it might prove my theory. She avoids some of the trickier songs, because this isn't the easiest song to sing.
She's never done it live.
Something to Remember, her ballads.
Clip. Yeah, it wasn't even on that.
No, it wasn't, was it? I'll tell you what, some of the promotion around this, before we keep going through the final 3 tracks, it was also geared to be a lot more subtle, wasn't it, than in past eras where it was all explosive controversy. I mean, it wasn't going to work. If she tried something controversial here, people would have shaken their heads and walked away. They wouldn't have listened. She couldn't shock people, is my argument at this stage. People were not to be shocked by Madonna anymore. So the Pajama Party, wasn't that was the actual release of the album? Am I right, Felix, about that?
That was the premiere.
Yes.
The premiere of the Bedtime Story video.
Now, do you want to just describe really briefly what that was for people who don't know what the Pajama Party was? Because I only just saw it recently online.
It was on MTV.
Mm-hmm.
Like, actually, it happened right before I moved down to Florida.
Yep.
Like, it was like just before the summer of '95. It was like an hour-long special, and they interviewed her and they played like a mega mix of some of her big hits up to then.
Selected fans had to come along wearing pajamas.
Yeah, everybody was dressed in pajamas, and she read Mr. Spider's Tea Party.
Now, how angry was she when she read that, Felix? Do you remember why she got so cranky? Very cranky.
Like somebody said, "You go, girl," and she's like, "I will go if you don't shut up."
She was genuinely peeved because she had this probably image in her head about what she was going to do. She was going to sit on the bed and read her fans a story. Lovely idea. Would the fans shut up? Hell no. They would not shut up. And I think whoever called that, by the time she got them, it took about multiple times for her to shut them up. And then some fan yelled out something. I'll tell you what, I'm surprised the other fans didn't lynch him or her, because everyone was like, "Shh, the Queen has told us to shut up."
People were going like, "Shh."
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And then one girl yelled out, "You go, girl." And she's like, "I will go if you don't shut up."
So Madonna, isn't it? You know, and also so Madonna to have such an unrealistic expectation that she'd get a club full of people to be completely silent while she reads a book. I'll tell you what, that is a sign of that arrogance that is part of her appeal to me. Tell me what you love about this era, Kyle, in terms of remixes.
Gosh, because that's really when I really started getting into like electronic dance music. I mean, I remember like getting the single Bedtime Stories when I was like 10 and like listening to it and being like, "Oh my God, like what kind of music is this? This is crazy." And I loved it and fell in love. So
my favorite was the Orbital mix. That's like so ahead of its time.
Of which song?
I still love it to this day. Bedtime Story. She did the Orbital mix in the Reinvention tour.
But if we can let's go to Sanctuary, because we're going to get to Bedtime Story, because there's a lot to say about that. There really is. But Sanctuary feels like the prelude to Bedtime Stories. Like they do go hand in hand, don't they? These two tracks.
Yeah, it was really dreamy, and like it's like a song you can close your eyes and meditate.
Well,
you know,
it's a remix too, which is I've actually tried to find the original unmixed version, but it's a remix by Nelly Hooper.
So hang on, Sanctuary on Bedtime Stories is a remix of the original.
Yeah, if you look at the production notes, it has him down as the remixer.
Wow. Do we love Sanctuary?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite songs on the album.
Same here. And that's when you can really tell that, to me, that's where you start to see the signs of where she's going musically, because what she was saying in interviews was that she was like interested in the club sounds of the UK, and the dub sounds in the house, and progressive trance that was, taking over the clubs.
And then that obviously, even on the album, merges and bleeds straight into Bedtime Story. Apparently, I mean, first of all, this was written by Bjork, who also inspired Kylie's Impossible Princess album as well. She was big at the time, felt very avant-garde, alternative, magical, different, quirky, all of those things.
Like, a lot of people thought she was crazy.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, she is, like, truly. Let's not mince words. Go and, by the way, please do. Anyone listening, you have not lived your life until you go onto YouTube and look up Bjork talking to a TV. I'm pretty sure that will bring up the video. If you haven't seen it, I won't say anything more about it because there's nothing to say. You just have to watch it. Dear Lord.
Well, a lot of her videos are out there.
Well, yeah, they are, which is good in an artistic way. But you know, I do feel for that woman. You know, it must be very exhausting living in that brain. But Bedtime Story is a good result of that brain, of course. I also heard this was one of the most expensive videos, or possibly the most expensive video she'd ever made up until that point. Is that correct?
At the time, I think when it came out, it was the most expensive video. I think it was like I think until Michael and Janet Jackson did their video together, I think they beat her with their video. But yeah, it was a trippy video. I heard, it was weird. I loved it. Me too, but it kind of reminds me of the Nine Inch Nails Closer video. I don't know. It's just it. I was a kid watching it, and I was like, "What the heck is going on?"
She was like in a dream machine.
Yes.
She was in a dream machine, like
hooked up. And
it was her dream and everything she was thinking about and seeing in her mind.
Favorite moment of the video when she floats down the hall like ghostly. I love that bit. That's my favorite part of the video.
Yeah.
A lot of the images too are based on well-known paintings. So
yeah, like Salvador Dali and Picasso and.
Oh, really? That makes sense now that I think about it.
Because the lips for eyes. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Amazing, some amazing live performances, as we've already talked about at the Brit Awards. That's my favourite one. I watch that quite often. By the way, if anyone knows of a high quality version of that, I often feel like finding the people who have the vaults of these TV channels, because I can only find little dodgy. The quality of the audio is good, but I would love to see a more high a high res version of that. There's my little whinge for the day. I mustn't have had my coffee. I'm sounding like an old whinger. But frankly, I just love that performance so much. I would like to see it where it's not, obviously someone's recorded it on a VHS back in the day.
But you should check out the Orbital mix. It's really good.
Yes, I will.
It gives the song a whole different sound and feeling.
Fantastic. Thank you. I guarantee you I would have heard it. It just doesn't come to mind.
I'm sure you've heard it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard it. It was like it was fast and like kind of intense, and it was fun to dance to.
We moved to the final track of the album, Take a Bow. Now, this video is the video, everything about it, and is perfect, actually. Like, it's not out there, like, look at me, attention-seeking perfect, like we are used to with Madonna, but there's everything about this track, the composition, the video clip, the vocals, the styling, perfect in every single way. Plus, this is also a little bit of a prequel to another song of hers as well, isn't it?
You'll see.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although I kind of have to disagree, though, because in the video, like, that's what I'm saying. That, to me, it's the same Madonna that did erotica, because the video is pretty sexual. I mean, I was 10 when it came out, and I remember her at the television.
She was like laying in the bed, and
yeah. She wasn't like, that's the thing. Just because she put her clothes completely back on, her sexuality was still full force.
Wouldn't you call it more sensual, this video clip, than sexual, though? Like, can you really call this one? I mean, mainly she's just making out with a television.
It wasn't sexual. It wasn't really sexual. She was just like, when she was like laying on the bed with the TV, she's like fantasizing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, to me, it's sexual, because I mean, I just remember her like rubbing like her, her breast and like with the silk sheets and all that, but it's not like in your face bluntness of like justify my love or erotica.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess it is more sensual in that sense, but it's still sexual to me.
Well, look, everyone gets a boner from different things. So, some people will see this as sexual, some will see it as sensual, and that's okay. And just when you thought Madonna had done the perfect project in Bedtime Stories about re-cementing herself as an artist, a credible artist, one that can produce music and actually can get respect without controversy and without the look at me attitude, comes the big controversy of bullfighting.
I don't really remember. Yeah, I don't remember that part of it. I think I remember vaguely hearing something about it, but I don't think it was too much of a controversy over here.
Wow, so
No,
it didn't even resonate over there in the States.
not really. I mean,
No, yeah.
people were talking more about the guy playing the bullfighter than the actual bullfighter.
Because he's a
Yeah.
famous bullfighter, isn't he? Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The idea that she was glamorizing bullfighting was frowned upon, and quite frankly, quite a lot of Madonna's fans, I would have thought, would be progressive-minded people who, wouldn't necessarily condone something like bullfighting. Do either of you have any view on that, or is it just a null and void issue? Like, does it upset you that she's used bullfighting to glamorize her work?
no.
It's a music video. It's fiction. I don't know, I'm able to distinguish reality from fiction. It's not like she's actually out there bullfighting on the weekends.
In the interviews, she was talking about the beauty of bullfighting and the artistry of it as well, and I think that sort of fanned the flames again. But, it'd be interesting to see if anyone listening has thoughts around that. Should she be glamorizing bullfighting, or was she even trying to glamorize bullfighting? We're not sure. But as a track, talk about the song Take a Bow. I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? Babyface at his best.
Yes, it is. I wish you would perform it live.
Well, she did in the Rebel Heart tour. It's on the Japanese edition of the DVD.
Didn't she only do it? Did she do it in every city, or I think she only did it in
No.
cities, though, right? Yeah.
She only did it. She only did it when she went to like the Philippines and like a couple other places.
I think she did do it in Australia once.
US
Fascinating fact about Take a Bow, and I've always wanted an audience like this to ask this question, because when you look up facts and factoids about Madonna, and maybe, her most successful single, her highest charting single, her highest selling single, you get mixed messages.
It was number one for like...
This was...
It was number one
but was it on the mainstream chart? That's the question I want to ask. It was like 11 weeks at the top of some Billboard chart, but was that the mainstream Billboard in America?
Yeah, it was like...
Well, it was number one. It was number one for 6 weeks in the US.
That is incredible, isn't it? Don't you reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, far out. That's just unbelievable. I'm just a bit sus. It's not to say that the song isn't great and worthy and all of that, but it makes me suspicious because it didn't... A number one song for 7 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it is, you know what that is. It goes into popular culture like Gangnam Style. Like, you think of your very, very biggest. And Take a Bow's not in that league. So it just doesn't add up. Was there something changing in the way they calculated charts at the time, for example? I'm wondering.
Well, in the US, there was a lot of R&B that was really popular then. Like they had TLC, they had Jodeci, they had, Salt and Pepper, and like a bunch of people like that.
So it was the sound.
That was...
Mariah Carey was changing her sound around that time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantasy.
Mariah Carey was big then. Mariah Carey was really big then.
So I get it. It's just it keeps coming up in different statistics as her biggest chart success. And when you put it up against things like, I don't know, Vogue or Like a Virgin and, a few others, Like a Prayer, I suppose, even Express Yourself to a slightly lesser extent. Like, for me, it's not in the same league. But somehow statistically it keeps coming up as the number one in different, depending on the category you look at. So for all the geeks out there that are interested in that sort of thing, other people will be wondering, who cares?
There was remixes for it too.
Yes, good remixes.
But like they were okay. There was one like In the Soul, and then there was like Silky Soul. They're like very R&B type mixes.
Secret and Bedtime Stories, the remixes were all really trancey, progressive, super clubby. Even the Human Nature remixes, though, weren't as clubby as the Secret or Bedtime Stories remixes. They seemed a little bit more like straight house. I think one reason why this album gets kind of left on the back burner also is because while she was planning to do a tour, she's in out of
yeah.
So she canceled the whole plans for a tour. So like, why with Erotica, there's the girly show, and with
I remember that.
There's Blonde Ambition. Like, there's also like a world tour that usually goes on. And it took her 8 years. She took like an 8-year.
Yeah.
I love the album, but I can't imagine that this would have translated into. She would have had to do a very different type of tour to make this work because it's so mid-tempo, and you know how she likes to do the majority of an album, or at least half of the tracks on the album. So it would have been interesting to see how she would have actually toured the world on the back of this. Would have loved to have seen it, but like you say, Evita was her obsession for years before she actually got it, and there she was, actually into it.
Yeah, I think once she got Evita, I think she was kind of done with Bedtime Stories, and her focus was all on Evita. You said, she wanted that role for years. Like you said, she was set on getting that part.
Yep. It does feel a little bit like the promotion for Bedtime Stories was abandoned a little bit. There's sort of no evidence of that, but there's just a feeling like she didn't wrap it up like she normally would. So, yeah, sort of like, she finished it and rounded it off really quickly. As we all know, Evita, the absolute obsession of her life. She wanted that part and she was going to make it work. A few shout outs here. Part of the Bedtime Stories production, I've always loved Donna Delora and Nikki Harris. They were in on this and they described going into the studio and there was no mucking around, which I think is the experience of all making most of Madonna's albums that they would have had. They handed the lyrics. She's given them the instruction. They can throw in a few little suggestions, but not too much. And then bang, within a couple of hours, no retakes, first take every time. Kyle and Felix, what's the legacy of this album? Where does it sit in Madonna's album landscape? I think that we're coming full circle here because for me, my perception at least is that this is a respected album, but not a popular album.
It's just not, like you said, like all this, the 4 singles were the most standout tracks of the album. That's, I think, what people really take away from this album is the 4 singles, not really any of the other tracks like Inside of Me or Love Tried to Welcome Me. Unfortunately, I think they do get a little looked over. But I think, like I said, it's one of my favorite albums. I mean, I grew up on it, and it was a different time because that's when MTV was still playing music videos, and she was at every awards show. Not saying she's not doing that still, but it was still,
she was it.
They were still doing Madonna Rama on VH1.
Yeah,
when she was releasing albums.
Yeah, like I've noticed that it's like kind of in the middle for a lot of fans. You know, some fans love it, some fans are like, and like it gets a mixed reaction. But I mean, for me, it's one of my favorites. I listen to it a lot. There's more songs I listen to than others, but it was a good album.
Any particular tracks that weren't on the album that were made for Bedtime Stories that you like the one that I mentioned, which was
Love Won't Wait.
Love Won't Wait.
Love Won't Wait.
It keeps escaping my brain. Your Honesty.
Those are definitely like for me, like those were B-sides for a reason. Was it Let Down Your Guard?
Let Down Your Guard.
Yeah, that
was on one of the
Secret.
Yeah, on one of the imports.
Mm-hmm.
Let Down Your Guard.
It wasn't on the regular single.
Yeah, it was only it was on the import. I feel like there's a lot on the cutting room floor, kind of for a reason, to be honest.
Yeah.
So.
Final question without notice. If you could take any of the tracks off this album, besides Take a Bow, I'm going to restrict it. I'm quarantining Take a Bow. And for her to perform on live at her next tour, or even during Madam X, which she's currently doing, which one would it be? What do you want to see her perform?
I'd say Bedtime Stories.
Yes. Has to be, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. She actually almost didn't name the album Bedtime Stories because she was afraid that people would think that there's hidden innuendos in the name and that it would be like naughty bedtime stories, something that you would tell your lover at night. So, but she said fuck it, and she liked it, so she stuck with it, which I think is a great actually album title. So
some of the songs resonated with me, like Love Tried to Welcome Me and Sanctuary and Secret, Human Nature. Those all stood out for me. I said I wish she would do some of them in a tour again, like
Yeah, she does ditch a lot of these tracks on tour, except for Human Nature.
Yeah.
Kyle and Felix, thank you for discussing Bedtime Stories tonight. Fantastic to have you reflecting on this interesting era in Madonna's career. And for all of you Philistines out there who just go blah, no one's critical of it, but the people who don't put it into their CD tray or onto their vinyl or listen to it on Spotify or whatever the devil you people do these days, go and give it another go. It's really good. Go and make some pasta and put it on in the background. That's what I intend to do. Thank you, Kyle and Felix.
Yeah, thank you for having us again.
All right.